This is True Crime's Altar, where love turns lethal, family ties unravel, and secrets explode into violence. If you're drawn to haunting true crime stories told with raw emotion and gripping detail, subscribe now, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. It was a humid Sunday morning in Georgia, and the sound of the church choir drifted down the street like honey in the air. Inside Mount Olive Baptist, Pastor Elijah Brown stood behind the pulpit, his voice rich and commanding. The congregation hung on every word. He spoke of faith, forgiveness, and family, his dark eyes glowing under the soft light streaming through the stained glass. To everyone watching, he was the perfect man of God, a devoted husband, a loving father, and a shepherd to his people. But perfection is often the best disguise for sin. Monica, his wife of 8 years, sat on the front pew, proud and composed. Beside her was her 19-year-old daughter, Tiana, her skin smooth like polished mahogany, her hair pulled into a neat bun. She had grown into a beautiful young woman, too beautiful, some whispered, and Elijah had noticed. At first, he told himself it was harmless, that he simply admired her blossoming maturity. He had raised her since she was 11. She called him Dad. But somewhere along the line, his thoughts changed. His glances lingered. His touch grew softer, slower, heavier with meaning. He began finding excuses to talk to her alone, Bible study sessions that ran late, car rides to youth choir rehearsals that detoured through quiet back roads, gentle compliments that made her blush. Tiana didn't understand the unease she felt at first. Elijah made her feel special, chosen. He told her she had a rare spirit, a light meant for greater purpose. When he prayed for her, his hand stayed on her shoulder a little longer than it should. He told her it was love, God's kind of love, the kind that built trust. But that trust became a chain. One evening after Bible study, Monica went to visit her sister, leaving Elijah and Tiana alone in the parsonage. The house was still, the air thick with summer heat. Tiana sat at the dining table, flipping through her notes, when Elijah walked in carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He smiled, setting one in front of her. "You've been working hard, baby girl. God is proud of you." She smiled faintly, embarrassed. "Thank you, Pastor." He looked at her. "You don't have to call me that here." She hesitated. "What should I call you?" "Just Elijah," he said softly. That night, the line blurred for the first time. He hugged her a moment too long. When she pulled away, confused, he told her, "Love comes in many forms. The world may not understand, but God knows our hearts." It was the start of a secret neither of them could escape. Months passed. On Sundays, Elijah preached about purity and temptation. On weeknights, he texted Tiana verses about love and obedience. She felt trapped between shame and loyalty, afraid to disappoint him, afraid to lose her mother's trust. Monica noticed small things, a lingering look, a nervous laugh, but she dismissed them. Elijah was her husband, a man of God. Doubt felt like sin.
Please kindly subscribe to the channel for more haunting true crime stories. It helps us to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Tiana's behavior changed. She stopped hanging out with friends, skipped youth meetings, and seemed constantly anxious. One afternoon while folding laundry, Monica found a handwritten note tucked inside Tiana's Bible. It was a prayer asking God to forgive her for the things she does with Pastor Elijah. Monica froze, staring at the words until they blurred. Her heart pounded as she tried to convince herself it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew. She knew the truth she wasn't ready to face. That evening, Elijah returned home to find her quiet, her eyes red. "Everything all right?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Just tired." But her mind was racing. She needed proof. Over the next few weeks, Monica watched closely. She noticed how Tiana's shoulders stiffened whenever Elijah walked into a room, how his gaze always found her first. She checked their phones, but both were protected by passcodes. Then one night, while Elijah showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Tiana lit up the screen. "I can't do this anymore. It feels wrong." Monica's hands trembled. The world tilted. She opened the message thread, reading months of hidden exchanges, plans to meet, promises of love, fear of being caught. She felt her chest tighten, her breath short and shallow. When Elijah stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist, he froze. Monica stood there holding his phone. "How long?" she whispered. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "How long have you been sleeping with my daughter?" she screamed, throwing the phone across the room. "Monica, please," he stammered. "You don't understand. Don't tell me I don't understand. You stood in God's house preaching about holiness while defiling my child." Tiana came running down the hall, eyes wide, realizing the truth had spilled out. "Mama, I'm sorry," she cried, collapsing at Monica's feet. Monica backed away, shaking her head. "Don't you call me Mama right now." Elijah tried to step closer, but she raised her hand. "Don't! I swear to God, don't!" That night, the house was a storm. Monica packed a suitcase, promising to go to the police in the morning. Elijah begged her to pray, to forgive, to think of the church. But forgiveness was beyond reach. He knew what exposure would mean: the end of his career, his reputation, his freedom. By dawn, his eyes were cold and hollow. While Monica slept in the guest room, he sat at the kitchen table staring at his Bible, the same one he'd used to justify everything. His hand rested on the gun he kept in the drawer. He told himself he only wanted to scare her, to make her listen. But when the sun came up, the man of God had already made up his mind. The morning light crept through the curtains, soft and golden, but the house felt heavy, suffocating. Monica woke with a pounding headache, her heart still raw from the night before. She could hear Elijah moving around in the kitchen, humming faintly to a gospel song. For a brief moment, she almost believed things were normal again, until she remembered. She rose slowly, her hands trembling as she gathered her purse and keys. When she walked into the kitchen, Elijah looked up, eyes red from a sleepless night. "Where are you going?" he asked quietly. "To the police," she said. "And then the deacons. They need to know who you really are." Elijah's expression hardened. "You can't do that, Monica." "Watch me," she snapped. "You molested my child and you expect me to protect you?" He stepped closer. "You'll ruin everything. The church, the family, your own daughter's life." "You already did that," she said. She pushed past him, but he caught her arm. "Let go, Elijah." His grip tightened. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I can't let you do this." The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Tiana stood frozen, clutching her Bible to her chest. "Please stop," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't fight anymore." Monica turned to her daughter, her voice cracking. "Baby, you don't have to protect him. We're going to fix this." Elijah's hand trembled as it moved toward the drawer. Monica didn't see it at first, but when she did, her eyes widened. "Elijah, no." The gun glinted in the morning light. Tiana screamed. A shot exploded, sharp and deafening. Monica staggered backward, her hand pressed against her chest, blood seeping between her fingers. She collapsed to the floor with a soft gasp, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Mama." Tiana fell to her knees beside her, sobbing uncontrollably. Elijah's face was pale, horrified at what he'd done. "Oh God, no, no," he whispered. He dropped to the floor, trying to cradle Monica, but it was too late. Her breathing slowed, then stopped. The room fell silent except for Tiana's cries. Elijah sat motionless, the weight of the gun still in his hand. Tiana looked up at him through tears. "You killed her. You killed my mother." "It was an accident," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You were going to ruin everything, Tiana. We can still fix this." "Fix this?" she screamed. "You murdered her." Elijah grabbed her shoulders, desperate. "I did it for us. You don't understand what this will do to you, to me. We just need to pray. We can ask for forgiveness." She tried to push him away, but he was stronger. His mind was unraveling, the calm voice of the preacher replaced by something cold and unrecognizable. "You'll tell them," he muttered. "You'll tell them what happened." "I have to," she sobbed. "I can't live with this." Elijah stood, pacing back and forth, his breath short and uneven. "If I lose you, I lose everything. Please, just let me go," she whispered. "You need to turn yourself in." "No one will understand," he said. "They'll twist it. They'll make it evil. But God knows my heart." He raised the gun again. "Elijah, please," she cried, backing away. "You said you loved me." "I do," he said, tears rolling down his face. "And that's why I can't let you go." The second gunshot shattered the air. Tiana fell beside her mother, her body limp and still. The room smelled of gunpowder and blood. Elijah dropped the weapon and stumbled backward, his eyes wild. He fell to his knees, screaming into his hands until his voice broke. Minutes passed before he moved again. He dragged both bodies to the bedroom, laying them side by side on the bed. He brushed the hair from Monica's face, kissed her forehead, and whispered a prayer. Then he kissed Tiana's cold cheek. "I'm sorry, my child. I'm sorry." He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, his mind spinning between horror and denial. When the church secretary called later that morning asking why he hadn't arrived for service, he ignored it. He turned off his phone, wiped down the gun, and drove into the countryside. The radio played softly, a choir singing about redemption. He parked by a field, the same place he once baptized new members in a nearby stream. The gun felt heavy again in his hand. He pointed it under his chin, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Lord, forgive me." The shot echoed across the empty fields, startling birds from the trees. Hours later, a farmer found him slumped over the steering wheel, still breathing, blood soaking his shirt. He had missed the mark. The man of God who couldn't bear exposure had failed even at dying. Elijah woke in a hospital bed 3 days later, wrists strapped to the rails, the sharp smell of disinfectant filling his lungs. His throat burned from the tube they'd used to keep him alive. When he tried to speak, only a hoarse whisper came out. A nurse leaned over him, her face neutral, but her eyes full of judgment. "You're lucky to be alive," she said flatly. "Police will be here soon." He turned his head toward the window. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters crowded the parking lot, and the words "pastor accused of double murder" scrolled across the television screen mounted on the wall. He wanted to close his eyes and disappear. Instead, memories flooded back. The gunshots, Monica's gasp, Tiana's final cry. A sound tore from his chest, half sob, half growl, and the nurse silently walked out. That evening, 2 detectives entered the room. One of them, a tall white officer with tired eyes, read Elijah his rights while the other recorded the statement. "You understand what you're being charged with?" "Yes," Elijah rasped. "Do you want to tell us what happened?" He stared at the ceiling. "It was sin," he murmured. "I tried to fight it. I prayed, I fasted, I begged God to take it away, but it kept coming back." "So you admit you were having a sexual relationship with your stepdaughter?" Silence. Then a nod. "And your wife found out?" Another nod. "And you shot them both?" Elijah's lips trembled. "I didn't plan it. I just wanted her to stop. I didn't mean to kill them." The detective leaned closer. "But you did. Twice." Elijah turned his face away, tears leaking down his cheeks. "God will judge me," he whispered. "He already did," the detective said quietly. Word of the murders spread fast. By the time Elijah was released from the hospital, his church had been vandalized. Someone spray-painted "sinner" across the front doors. The deacons resigned, the congregation scattered, and the denomination's headquarters issued a statement condemning his actions. The man who once filled pews now filled headlines. Reporters swarmed the courthouse the day of his first hearing. Elijah walked in shackled, his once crisp suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit. Cameras flashed as someone shouted, "Pastor Brown, did you kill them because they found out?" He didn't answer. Inside, the prosecutor laid out the charges: 2 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful sexual contact with a minor, and obstruction. Elijah sat motionless, eyes downcast, lips moving in silent prayer. Outside the courtroom, members of the congregation wept, some refused to believe it. "Pastor Brown would never," one woman cried. "That man baptized my children." But others weren't surprised. Rumors of inappropriate behavior had floated for years, dismissed as gossip. Now, the whispers were proof. Among those who came forward was Tiana's childhood friend, Sherry. She told detectives about nights when Tiana begged to stay at her house, about how she always looked uneasy when Elijah's name came up. "She said he watched her too close," Sherry explained. "I didn't want to believe it. He was our pastor." The prosecutor built her case brick by brick. Text messages, DNA evidence, a note in Tiana's journal describing how Elijah told her their love was God's secret plan. Monica's sister Ruth broke down on the stand during the preliminary hearing. "My sister thought she found a man of God," she said, voice trembling. Instead, she brought the devil into her home. The defense tried to paint Elijah as mentally unstable, a man who snapped under stress, but his calm confession destroyed that argument. He spoke softly, almost pastor-like, telling the court, "I fell into temptation. The devil knew my weakness." The judge ordered him held without bail. In jail, Elijah became both outcast and curiosity. Some inmates mocked him, calling him preacher man. Others asked him to pray for them. He spent his days reading the Bible, highlighting verses about forgiveness, avoiding mirrors. A journalist from a local station requested an interview. She asked, "Why did you do it?" Elijah's gaze stayed fixed on the table. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing the only family I had left. Afraid of people seeing who I really was." "And who are you, Pastor?" she pressed. He looked up, eyes hollow. "A liar, a coward, a murderer." The interview aired that night, sparking outrage and fascination. Viewers flooded social media with comments, some cursing him, others quoting scripture about mercy. The story became national news, another headline in America's long line of fallen preachers. Back in Georgia, Monica and Tiana were buried side by side. Hundreds attended the funeral, including members of the church who had once called Elijah their spiritual father. The choir sang softly as Ruth spoke through tears. "My sister trusted a man who used the name of God to do evil." Let her story remind us, faith without truth is a weapon. Cameras captured every moment, and by evening, the clip had gone viral. When Elijah saw the footage on the small TV in his cell, he wept until he couldn't breathe. He pressed his forehead against the wall and whispered, "Lord, what have I done?" Weeks passed as Elijah sat in his cell counting the hours by the echo of the metal door closing. Letters poured in from strangers, some condemning him, others quoting scripture about forgiveness. He read every one, but nothing eased the weight pressing on his chest. Each night he dreamed of Monica's face, the way her eyes had widened when she realized what he was about to do. Each morning he woke up hoping it had all been a nightmare. It wasn't. In the small Georgia town he once ruled from the pulpit, his name had become a curse. Mount Olive Baptist shut its doors indefinitely. Parishioners argued on social media, some demanding justice, others claiming spiritual warfare. But the truth was plain. Elijah Brown had become the monster parents warned their daughters about. Detectives continued piecing together the case, digging through years of sermons, phone records, and financial documents. They discovered Elijah had used church funds to rent a hotel room where he'd met Tiana several times. Receipts, security footage, and text messages left no room for doubt. What had started as whispers of scandal was now a mountain of evidence. The district attorney prepared for a trial that would grip the entire state. In court, Elijah's public defender begged for a plea deal, but the prosecutor refused. He manipulated a child and murdered 2 women. He deserves life without parole. The judge agreed. The trial was scheduled for early spring, 6 months after the killings. In the weeks leading up to it, reporters camped outside the courthouse, interviewing anyone who had ever known Elijah. Old church members remembered his charisma. Neighbors recalled his booming laughter. None could reconcile that image with the man in shackles. Ruth visited the jail once, clutching Monica's wedding photo. "Why?" she asked through the glass. Elijah stared at her, tears running down his cheeks. "I loved her." "You don't kill what you love," she said coldly. You destroy what you fear." She left without another word. When the trial finally began, the courtroom overflowed. Every seat was filled, cameras lined the back wall, and the air was thick with tension. The prosecution laid out its case methodically: graphic photos, digital records, witness testimony. The jury listened in silence as the medical examiner described the gunshot wounds, the trajectory, the proximity. Each detail made Elijah flinch. Then came the moment that shattered what little defense he had left. The prosecutor read aloud one of Tiana's final text messages. "I'm scared, Pastor. This isn't love. It feels wrong. Please let me go." The words echoed through the courtroom. Elijah bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. The prosecutor turned to the jury. He didn't let her go. He silenced her forever. The defense called only two witnesses, a psychiatrist and Elijah himself. The psychiatrist described years of suppressed trauma and self-delusion, but it sounded like excuses. When Elijah took the stand, he tried to sound remorseful. His voice shook as he said, "I failed as a husband, a father, and a pastor. I let sin destroy everything I touched." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Pastor Brown, is it true you told Tiana that your relationship was part of God's plan?" "Yes," he whispered. "Did you believe that?" "At the time, I did." "Do you believe it now?" Elijah looked up, eyes rimmed with red. "No, I believe I was possessed by my own desires." The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the ceiling fans. "And when your wife threatened to expose you, you killed her." He nodded slowly. "I was afraid." "Then you killed Tiana too." "I wanted to die with them," he murmured, "but I couldn't pull the trigger fast enough." The prosecutor stared at him. "You wanted to die with them, but instead you lived to watch what you did." Gasps rippled through the room. The trial lasted 8 days. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." Elijah didn't move. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. "Elijah Brown, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." A murmur ran through the spectators. Ruth began to sob quietly in the front row. The bailiff led Elijah away in cuffs, and the last thing he saw before the door closed was a framed cross hanging over the judge's bench. For a man who once spoke of redemption, there was none left. He was transferred to a maximum security prison outside Macon. The first night there, another inmate recognized him from the news. "Ain't you that preacher who killed his family?" Elijah didn't answer. The man laughed. "Guess the devil finally came for his own." Elijah spent his days cleaning floors, attending mandatory counseling sessions, and reading the same Bible that once justified his crimes. Some nights he heard Monica's voice in his dreams, soft but distant, whispering, "You thought God would save you from yourself." Months turned into years, but time did not soften Elijah's guilt. Each day in prison felt the same: gray walls, metallic echoes, the low murmur of men trying to forget their crimes. He stopped preaching early on. The chaplain had offered him a chance to lead Sunday service, but he refused. "I've said enough words in God's name," he told him. Instead, he sat on the back pew every week, silent, head bowed, the face of a man who had lost the right to speak. The other inmates watched him closely. Some mocked him, others feared him. One younger prisoner asked, "You ever think God'll forgive you?" Elijah stared at the floor. "Forgiveness ain't mine to decide." At night, he wrote letters he never sent, to Monica, to Tiana, even to Ruth. He wrote about his confusion, his self-deception, how he had twisted faith into something dark. But the letters always ended the same way: "I don't deserve peace." Meanwhile, outside those walls, the story of the preacher who killed his family became the kind of legend small towns never forget. True crime shows picked it up, turning his tragedy into a cautionary tale about sin and secrecy. Documentaries replayed the courtroom footage, clips of his sermons, interviews with crying congregants who once called him a man of God. Each episode ended the same, with the image of the church doors chained shut, paint peeling, the sign out front still reading, "All are welcome." 10 years passed before anyone spoke Elijah Brown's name in Mount Olive again. The church reopened under a new pastor, new paint, and a new name, but the people still remembered the silence that followed those gunshots. The story of Elijah Brown faded into history, but the lesson remained etched into the hearts of everyone who'd ever heard it. Evil doesn't always look like the world expects. Sometimes it hides behind good suits, polished smiles, and words about heaven. Faith can heal, but when it's twisted, it can destroy. Love is only pure when it's honest, and power without accountability becomes rot. This story reminds us that betrayal isn't always loud. It's often whispered by those we trust most. And when that trust is broken, no prayer can restore what's been lost. But even after tragedy, truth has a way of finding its voice, and grace waits quietly for those brave enough to face it. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking true story of faith, deception, and redemption. What are your thoughts about this case? Do you believe forgiveness can ever heal such a betrayal? Tell us what you think in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Crimes Altar for more real stories that dig deep into the dark corners of the human heart. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, evil often wears a gentle smile.